I sat at the gleaming mahogany dining table in my parents' home, the same one where every conversation somehow became Diana's spotlight. Tonight was no exception. She held her wine glass like a scepter, sloshing Pinot Noir dangerously close to the rim as she launched into another tale of conquest. The acquisition closed at $50 million, she declared, her voice syrup-smooth and just as sticky. Sterling Tech is officially the fastest-growing software company in the state. Applause came not in claps, but in the worshipful gleam of our parents' eyes. I'm Mira Patel. For the past 5 years, I've been the family's shadow, the afterthought, the letdown, or so they believe. And what about you, Mira? Diana turned toward me, her smile steeped in condescension. Still tinkering with that little startup of yours? What was it called again? Shadow something. Shadowbox Digital, I said, sipping water instead of wine. Clarity would serve me better than a buzz tonight. I had a merger to finalize in the morning. Right, she said, waving a dismissive hand. Websites for local businesses, wasn't it? Very quaint. Our mother, ever the diplomat, interjected, not everyone can build a company like Sterling Tech. Darling, Mira is doing her best with what she has. If only they knew. Shadowbox Digital was no modest operation. Beneath the surface of our unassuming storefront and humble branding, we were a dominant force in cybersecurity, serving government contracts, global enterprises, and yes, clients whose revenues made Sterling Tech look like a lemonade stand. But Diana had always been the golden child, top of her class, Ivy League MBA, media darling of the tech world. When she launched Sterling Tech, our parents remortgaged their house to fund her dream. They never once asked about mine. I read about Sterling's new security suite, our father said, beaming, revolutionary stuff. Diana, you're changing the game. I hid a smile behind my glass. My team had uncovered critical vulnerabilities in that very platform last week. We'd sent a discreet warning through a third-party firm. Diana ignored it. After all, what could a no-name consultancy know about her revolutionary code? Diana leaned in, voice full of mock importance. We're announcing a major merger tomorrow. Huge deal, one of the biggest in state history. She tilted her glass toward me. But I'm sure you understand the importance of confidentiality agreements. Oh wait, your little web design firm probably doesn't deal with those. My phone buzzed silently in my lap. A message from my COO. Board approved, ready to send final documents. What was that, sweetheart? My mother asked, noticing my momentary glance. Client emergency, I replied smoothly. You know how it is, small business websites and all. Diana laughed, a polished, cutting sound. Ah yes, I remember those days, losing sleep over pennies, but that's the difference between us, isn't it? I always aimed higher. I tapped out a quick reply. Send it, meeting at 9. Only a handful of people knew the truth. Shadowbox Digital was a smokescreen. Behind it stood a cybersecurity empire cloaked in anonymity, operating through layers of subsidiaries and front companies. Our headquarters spanned 3 floors of a downtown skyscraper. Our team, over 200 elite engineers and digital strategists, and for the past year, we'd been quietly acquiring Sterling Tech shares through silent partners and shell corporations. Diana's flawed platform was about to make headlines, for all the wrong reasons. Sterling stock would nosedive. And then, we'd swoop in. Shadowbox wouldn't just save Sterling Tech. We would own it. Another glass, Diana? My mother asked, refilling her wine. Absolutely, Diana said, grinning. We should always celebrate success. She turned to me, her voice laced with honey and venom. If you ever want advice on scaling up, Mira, let me know. I'm sure one of Sterling's smaller teams handles more revenue than your entire company. I smiled politely. Tomorrow, she'd be working for me. I checked my phone again. Our updated valuation had just come through, $3 billion. Sterling Tech's market cap, less than half that. That's kind of you, I said, keeping my tone even. Actually, I have a few meetings about expansion tomorrow. Oh, Diana's brows lifted, theatrical as ever. Finally moving out of that shoebox, maybe hiring a second employee? Our father chuckled, ever ready with a half-hearted defense. Now, Diana, be nice. Not everyone can be as successful as you. I thought of the stack of documents waiting in my real office, finalized merger contracts, shareholder approvals, and the paperwork that would make Diana, quite literally, report to me. By this time tomorrow, Sterling Tech would belong to Shadowbox Digital. You're right, I said, rising from the table. I should head out. Big day ahead. Diana raised her glass with a smirk. To small victories and modest ambitions. I offered a faint smile and left, her words rolling off me like water. On the drive home, my thoughts drifted to the dinner 5 years ago that changed everything. It had been Diana's launch party. She stood on our parents' patio, bathed in spotlight, preaching her vision like gospel. That night, I'd tried to share my plans, my idea for a next-gen cybersecurity firm that operated under the radar. Diana had cut me off with a patronizing pat. "Oh, honey," she'd said, smiling like a mother humoring a child. "Security's too complex. Why don't you stick to something simple, like web design?" So I did, or at least, I made it look like I did. I leased a small office, hired a handful of developers, and built a modest web design company as Shadowbox's public face. Behind the curtain, though, I was assembling a team of elite minds, building a security powerhouse with roots in everything from national defense to corporate intelligence. My phone buzzed again as I pulled into the garage. Final confirmation. They still think they're merging with Atlas, and apparently, Diana's listed as your supervisor on the org chart. I laughed quietly to myself. Tomorrow was going to be satisfying. The next morning, 40 floors above the city, I stood in the real Shadowbox Digital headquarters. From this height, I could see the tiny downtown office my family thought I worked in, a fitting metaphor, always visible, always underestimated. "You ready, James?" My COO appeared at my door. "Sterling's execs are here, Diana included." She looked confused when she saw the name on the conference room. She has no idea where she is. I smoothed the front of my suit, sharp and tailored, a stark contrast to the understated outfits I wore at family dinners. "Let's begin." When I entered the glass-walled conference room, Diana was standing at the window, scanning the skyline. She turned at the sound of the door and froze. "Mira," her voice was laced with disbelief, "what are you doing here? This is a closed meeting." I walked to the head of the table and set down my tablet. "Actually," I said calmly, "I called this meeting." She let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Don't be ridiculous. I'm here to meet the CEO of Atlas Dynamics." I smiled. Atlas Dynamics is a subsidiary of Shadowbox Digital, my company. Silence fell. Diana's face paled. I watched the progression, confusion, calculation, disbelief. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. "No, that's not, Shadowbox is. It's a tiny web firm. You build websites for restaurants." "That's our storefront," I said, nodding to James, who began the presentation. "But maybe you should have paid more attention to who's been buying Sterling Tech shares this past year, or who flagged those security flaws you ignored last month." Across the room, Sterling's board members flipped through their packets, realizing exactly who they were now working for. Diana's champagne glass slipped from her hand and shattered against the tile. "No." I clicked to the first slide, Shadowbox real org chart, complete with its web of subsidiaries, government contracts, and acquisition history. Shadowbox Digital is the parent company of 7 tech firms. We specialize in advanced cybersecurity and infrastructure defense. As of this morning, we own a controlling stake in Sterling Tech. Diana stood frozen, her voice barely a whisper. You set this up?" I met her gaze. "Every piece." "I'll continue," I said, my voice steady. "We own 51% of Sterling Tech's shares. This meeting isn't about negotiating a merger, it's about announcing one." Diana's face drained of color. "You can't do this," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Actually, I can," I replied. "Your board has already approved the deal." They were quite eager to accept our offer, especially after we demonstrated the critical security flaws in your new platform. Her cheeks flushed a deep red. "Those warnings came from you?" "We tried to tell you privately," I said, meeting her gaze. "You chose not to listen." I turned to address the board, feeling the weight of the moment settle into place. "Sterling Tech will now become a division of Shadowbox Digital. We'll fix the security issues, integrate the salvageable technology, and restructure the management team." "Restructure?" Diana's voice cracked, disbelief mingling with the sting of defeat. "I'm the CEO." "Not anymore," I said, sliding a document across the table. "Your resignation letter is already prepared. Don't worry, your golden parachute is generous." The next hour passed in a blur of signatures, legal formalities, and stunned silence. Diana sat motionless, seemingly unable to comprehend what was unfolding. When the board members filed out, she was the last to speak. "Why?" she asked, her voice hollow with confusion. "Why go to all this trouble? Why pretend to be small?" I sat on the edge of the table, my expression calm. "Do you remember 5 years ago, when you told me to know my limitations? You, Mom, Dad, you all decided what I was capable of without ever asking what I was actually doing. So this is revenge?" Diana's voice wavered. "No," I corrected her, leaning forward slightly. "This is business. Sterling Tech is a solid acquisition for us, despite its flaws. The fact that it happens to be deeply satisfying is just a bonus." My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, reading the message from our mother. Diana just called in tears. "What's going on? What have you done?" I turned the screen toward Diana, letting her see the message. "They still think you're the successful one," I said softly. "Should we go tell them together?" That evening, the family dinner was drastically different from the last one. I sat at the same table, but now Diana was the quiet one, pushing food around her plate as if the weight of it all had drained her. "I don't understand," our father repeated, still trying to make sense of it all. "How could Shadowbox be worth billions? You're running a tiny office downtown." "That office is for local web design clients," I explained, my voice calm. "Our real headquarters are in Hamilton Tower. You can see my office from here, top 10 floors, north side." Our mother reached for her wine glass with trembling hands, her eyes wide in disbelief. "But Diana, Sterling Tech. Sterling Tech will be well taken care of as part of Shadowbox," I reassured her, though Diana has chosen to step down as CEO. "Stepping down is a polite way to put it," Diana muttered, her voice bitter. "You could have warned us," our father said, his tone accusing. "All these years, pretending to run a small business." I raised an eyebrow. "Would you have believed me? You never asked about my work, except to compare it unfavorably to Diana's." Silence fell over the table, heavy and thick. Years of assumptions, dismissals, and condescension hung in the air like a suffocating fog. Finally, Diana spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I underestimated you. We all did." "Yes," I said simply, "you did." In the months that followed, Sterling Tech was fully integrated into Shadowbox. The security flaws were fixed, the technology revitalized, and the company flourished under new leadership. Diana took a position with a smaller tech firm, perhaps having learned the importance of humility. Our parents stopped comparing us, though they still struggled to comprehend how their underachieving daughter had built a billion-dollar company right under their noses. As for me, I kept the small web design office downtown. It was a reminder that appearances can be deceiving, and sometimes, the best success is the kind that nobody sees coming. Every now and then, I drive past that little office, remembering Diana's words, "Such a tiny startup." I smile every time. Because sometimes, the best response to being underestimated isn't to prove people wrong, it's to let them keep believing they're right, until the perfect moment to show them just how wrong they've been. These days, when people ask about my path to success, I tell them the truth. Sometimes the biggest achievements start with a small facade and a lot of patience, and sometimes, the sweetest victory isn't in proving others wrong, but in watching them realize how wrong they've been all along.